Hey everyone, and welcome to another video of KP Talks. I'm here to discuss the Kansas Materia Cup coming up. I will be your head judge, so I will not be playing, and I'll be judging aside Lopez, and we hope to bring you a great event. I'm going to go over a little bit about my San Francisco run with the Una deck and where to go from here. So, let's begin, shall we? All right. So, we have a lot of events that happened this past weekend. Doesn't look like all of them are here, though. But the majority are here. Okay. I'm just going to look at a few real quick. Just curious. Oops. Oh, I guess the size is here. I'm not sure what the cards are us is, though. Oh, it's the online one, I think. Ban Luminous Puma, how dare you? Yeah, it's the online event. Okay. I was wondering because if that's an LQ, then 6 isn't enough for an invite. So, okay. Anyways, back to what we're looking at. Okay, so Ray won with his version of Knights. I think this is the perfect example of play what you know. I never in a million years would have played a deck like this. However, Ray knew what he was doing, knew what he wanted to do, and clearly got there with what he knows. And it's also a very powerful strategy. Now, it's also very interesting to see him playing with like Axstar in a Knight deck, because you could argue Axstar is really good against Knights. And having something like that go against itself is not only like self-conflicting, but risky. So I'm surprised he did something like this. Now, will we be seeing stuff like this in the future? That I'm not 100% certain, but it's something to keep in mind for sure. The Knights. So, as far as I'm concerned, with San Francisco, I feel like Knights was the most represented deck by a lot. After that, I think it was kind of a mix of a lot of things. I think that, if I recall, was it Mike only? Yeah, I think Mike was the only 4-color wall player that converted in the day 2. Doesn't look like any other, just by the color wheel here. Yeah. And then there were 3 Unidecks also, or was it 4? So it was me. I knew Marcus was on it. And Bo was on it. And more, so 4. Okay. I'm gonna go. I'll start with mine. So, my deck list name is Faith of Eureka, because Mist. This is a card. Faith of Eureka is its job, but also I spoke with Eureka from Japan about this deck list, and we talked about it. He let me use it. All credit goes to him. My only contribution, I think, was literally just this white mage, because it's a standard unit, so it's easier to play warrior late. But I think literally everything else was him. I think, or if it wasn't him, it was his team. So shout out to them. And the 7-0 run on day 1 was very, very. How do I explain this? The way I've been telling people, I guess I'll just say it here, is I think Yuna is all the above here. I think it's the most fun I've had playing Final Fantasy, like playing with it. I also think that it is the most toxic environment that I've had while playing Final Fantasy, and I think it's the most skillful, like all at the same time. It is a house of cards, and when played right and played well, and knowing when to take risks and not to take risks, I think that the payoff is overpowered, and I think that um, you are massively rewarded for all the above. So I really enjoy it in the format. However, I do think it is the best card in the game right now by a mile. I It's kind of funny how they got rid of Chaos but then brought Yuna. Um, that being said, I I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of targeted hate towards Yuna in the next Materia Cup, so here at Kansas, and we'll see if it works out because I think there are cards that beat Yuna, but the Yuna decks can also have cards that answer them, and I'll and I will talk about that a little bit. Um, as for like the Chaos days, it was kind of like play bursts, hit them, win, right? So I guess that's the difference. So the main strategy I was going for here was uh I told everybody, do not attack. And by that I mean don't attack until you can 100% guarantee the win. Um, there are very few exceptions. My stream match was one of them. I'll mention that a little bit in a bit, but like, and I was also extremely careful about it as well. Uh, when I say don't attack until you can win, I don't mean have 7 attackers. I attacked with like 11 attackers because a few bursts here and there. Basically, if I am attacking and they live, then I feel like I've lost the game. I've lost control of the game, and that's bad. Um, so if you attack any earlier and you don't win, then you're at risk. Um, Several times throughout the weekend, I had people say, why don't you just win the game? Why don't you just you have 8 attackers, just attack them? Or my opponent would say that to me. They're like, well, I guess I lose the game because I could duel all their forwards on their turn and then attack. And I'm like, oh, I'm not attacking, don't worry. Because there's risk there. Now, there's some exceptions, like I played against Tori on his monster deck, and I'm like, okay, the deck doesn't have very many summons. Like, he has Amat for sure. I doubt he plays Lev 6. Maybe he plays Burnholder. I doubt it. Maybe Kuchulin something. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, like, Fire Water has a lot of potential bursts, right? So I took a little bit more of a risky approach there because I'm like, it's worth it to go for it. So, but in situations like when I played against Will, um, that's a situation. Let me pull up his deck list real quick. Tournaments, which I ended up losing to Will. I didn't have the best draw, but he had a really good start, and he forced me to do certain things. So he played it really well. Whereas like against Will, attacking him is a little riskier because of wards and Brunhilders, and then even just like so having Moody and Sauce to go get this one of Salamander, it's kind of brutal. Like you're against the clock here against a deck like this, so you can't just always sit around and dirtle around because he has a lot of like free value forwards like Tyvis, like okay, Clive is kind of that, but it's more so Ifrit. But when you prime, you have all those cards to special with, right? So eventually, yes, you can keep doling their stuff, but they'll eventually draw the specials and just nuke your forwards that you care about. So, and you'll eventually become overwhelmed by things, and you can't answer everything. And I'll go more into that as well. So Um, Number one rule: don't attack. Very few exceptions. There are exceptions, but number one rule: don't attack. Until you can like attack and be 100% sure that you're going to win. Um, I've had people. I actually kind of explained it on day two after I lost to some people. We were playing some test games, whatever. But I'm just like, yeah, I'm only going to attack when it's risky, and I have to when it's risky to not attack. If I'm going to, let me rephrase that. If I'm in a losing position and I need to end the game, I'm going to attack. That's basically it. If they set up a board state where I cannot control it or I cannot unit it forever, I'm going to attack. A lot of times you'll know that turning point once you play a lot of games with Yuna, where you can set up the game to be like, oh, I can win in 2 turns, and you can get attacked back, and it doesn't matter. Um, that's pretty common, but I would also argue most of the time that's a trap because again, you're not supposed to attack because of EX bursts. And to be specific, it's EX bursts to kill your Yuna or your Cecil or things to protect you. Things like that. That's the more specific thing. Um, or if you're in some situations of like, like against Will, if he bursts sauce to go get Salamander, that's also very bad. So it's more of a. It felt like when playing this deck, if I lost, it was my fault. And to me, that translates into skill. Now, is that healthy for the game? That's a different conversation. But that's also why I had the most fun playing with this deck that compared to like a lot of other decks I've played in the new, like recent events. Just this is a very like high skill and high floor deck. Like it, a lot of people who I feel like if you're just picking up the deck, I think you can also do pretty well with it, even if you're not sure of your plays. That being said, once you get better with the deck, you're gonna notice a massive difference of like what you should and shouldn't do, and it will take you a very long way. So, what should I talk about? Um, One of the main things. So don't attack. The second thing is don't be greedy, which kind of goes into like don't attack. Um, and by don't be greedy, I mean like don't tap out your Yuna all the way unless you have like a Miwa, right? A Miwa that you can play. Don't tap out all the way if your opponent still has cards in hand. So an example, like on turn one, let's say you have 4 forwards in play, including Yuna, and you're against, I don't know, a lightning or an ice deck or something, and they play like a backup that like searches or is going to try to search, and you cancel it, and um, then they pass their turn. You could also freeze that backup. However, if you do that, then you could get like clouded or Victoria'd to kill your Yuna, and because they still have cards in their hand. Um, and that's generally not okay. Now, like in this case, the scenario, I could have had like a Tama in play, so I don't care. I could do that. I could have a Cecil in play, so they had to pay more. Or like I said, I could have Miwa in my hand, and I could untap it and do it again. So there are exceptions, but again, it's a thing of like don't take risks unless you're like willing to accept the consequence. So don't be greedy unless you have to be greedy. Um, like I said before, I don't like attacking unless I have like 10 plus 11 forwards, whatever. This Ursula's in here literally to guarantee that you get there. I guess theoretically people could burst like 5 or 6 cards that draw them a card or search for cards and then cast their summons to interact. That is technically an out. However, again, like between Cecil and Tama, it's kind of difficult for them to even do that. Um, Something I would also watch out for is from now on, people playing their own Porums and their own Miwas and even like their own Cecils. I think this is a big like Miwa format in my opinion. Like I think Knights, even Knights are gonna start playing Miwa, just because it already works with Ramza. But especially if they're gonna play the one Yuna, kind of like how Ray did. Um, I think Hara even had a Knight build with three Yunos. I'm not sure if I'm sold on three, but uh, my point is the Miwa is not only like good against this deck, but it's like good against Knights, and that can go a long way. And it also, if you're playing your own unit, obviously, it can enable that. Um, and it also helps Knights with like their own Ramza as well. There's just a lot of. It's interesting how activating your forwards is becoming a lot better. um, it's a really big tempo play. It's kind of interesting to me. Um, and yeah, I do expect to see a lot more Porum because Porum negating Materia or even Yuna. Like if you're gonna get Materia when Yuna's in play, they both break. So that's really really good against the Yuna deck. But just starting off turns with Porum negate Yuna puts pressure under the Yuna player. And it just costs you zero. Like, well, the Porum costs you two, right? But you can do that every single turn. And that's pressure every single turn that costs zero. So I think Porum is a really, really good card right now. And at this event, I don't know if anybody else had Porum in their deck besides me. Maybe Brian actually. um, Brian, did you have it, bro? You didn't. Yeah. Wait, no, he did. Haha. So Brian had it, but I don't know about any. This is a this is an example of he's playing Yuna also with Miwa, and there's a lot going on here in FF4. I'm not even gonna go super deep in analyzing this because I don't have too much experience with it. But he has untappers with like Theodore and Hooded Man and Asura. Zeromus is also really good against the mirror match, like the Yuna mirrors, because they can't react to the doling all the forwards. Um, so yeah, I wonder if FF4 is good against the general Unidex because there's like a lot of anti Una cards just built into the synergy here. It's kind of cool. Um, but I definitely think Porum is a good way to go in the future. Um, okay. Any other things I want to say about the deck in general? So yeah, don't attack and don't be greedy. Um, and I'll go into the other list and say what I like and dislike about them too, with those like rule sets, right? Um, when me and Eureka were talking, one of the things we didn't know about is how many backups we wanted to play. And we also both agreed that this deck, how it is right now, it's unfinished. It's not complete. It's not the maximum power. There's still definitely improvements that can be made. And I agree. And I went into the tournament with that in mind. And it showed. It showed it wasn't a perfect deck, but it was still so good at what it does that I still, went 7-0. And it's still very, very powerful. Now, in my opinion, I really dislike the Vikings in the deck, but it's also at the moment I don't know of an alternative. It's also sometimes you can just roulette Viking and just and just get insanely lucky and it's like a non-game, right? So you do have that like free win sometimes with it. However, it's also like a weakness of the deck. All your cards are just low in power outside of like Cecil Galoof. Um, and the saving grace for me with the Vikings is where like Limit Break, because this card is that's just ridiculously strong. Um, so if I find a version without the Vikings, I'm definitely gonna miss Warrior of Light. So there better be a good alternative to Warrior Light if I'm not playing Vikings. Um, I liked Kate Sith because and Rosa of course, but like Kate Sith with the backup lineup we have here with Sarah Kolka, like turn one, if you Sarah Kolka, play Kolka, search Cecil. That's usually what I was going for. Um, then you have two backups, you know, you can two one drops here or any of these. Like it just fits so well having both of these backups in that scenario. Now you don't always play your backups either. So that's the thing is like how many backups are we supposed to play? We couldn't really figure out that answer. And I don't know if Eureka's figured it out. I haven't really talked to him about it, but I still don't know. To me, it just my answer would be don't have any dead cards in your deck. Your card, if you ever dead draw, it feels like you lose control of the game. And this is a game, this is a deck that you cannot lose control of the game, or else there. You know how back in the day, mono ice or ice X, ice lightning, things like that, where they had to get ahead, stay ahead. That's how this feels. Once you fall behind, it can be tough to come back. Now, this deck is also a very low mana cost, so you can definitely, you know, they can board wipe you, and then you can play four, maybe even six forwards in the next turn. So it's a little bit different from ice decks, but that's the way I would still approach it, is like the ice decks, where you need to keep them like under duress and under all the taxes and things like that. So that's basically how I was playing it, and that's more valuable than attacking and doing damage. That's why I started with don't attack. Um, so Cecil and Rosa, I definitely didn't draw Rosa enough, but I believe in Rosa. Cecil's cool. Uh, Having a field of like Cecil, Tama, Warrior of Light, Yuna, and whatever else, you have so much redundancy and protection. It's absurd. Now they can Ama your Wen Cecil, and that kind of stinks, but it is kind of what you sign up for. Um, and let's see what else. I also Materia, I think is very necessary in a version like this because you don't have ways to search for your Yuna. Uh, it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of exactly what you expect. It's either really really good or really really bad. If you don't draw any more light cards, it's obviously very good. If you have dull materia at any time, it's obviously very bad. And also like Kuchulin's really good against it. So and Porum. So but it does what you want it to do. And also if you ever materia Yuna go off and you can't make them pay for everything with taxes, well they're probably gonna always target the Yuna first. It's not a 100% guarantee. Sometimes they might target your Cecil, whatever, but they're probably going to target your Yuna because if Yuna's gone, then you kind of lose control of everything, right? Well, you draw a card off of Materia when a light forward other than Materia dies. So when Yuna dies, you're getting a card back. Um, and then you take your turn and you draw two more cards. You are one card away, 2 CP away from just Noctising your Yuna and playing it again. So if you just had another card or two backups in play, like you can just play it again. So the redundancy of Yuna in this deck is really strong. It's just you have to find it first though. What else? In my opinion, the worst card in the deck in this deck right now are these two Vaughns. I misplayed with it on stream, and I'm trying to not be biased because of that. But I just generally speaking, um, and technically speaking here, every time that you can Warrior Light in this deck, you should be able to Vaughn. Now, there's some exceptions, like if you had two White Mages, but like, I didn't ever really need this removal. But that being said, with this Materia Cup, you definitely need this removal. So I'm saying this is the worst card in the deck, but it might not be the worst card in the deck for Kansas because people, this kills enemy Porums. People are going to start playing Dark Emperors. This kills Dark Emperor. It's pretty good in mirror matches to kill their Yunas or their Cecils. So like, it's an interesting spot. I'm not completely sure if this card belongs or not, but it's something that definitely needs to be tested more and to consider for the future. Um, yeah. I don't think I want to really talk about anything else in the deck. I did play an ice water version before committing to this version, and it was also good with like Lynn and Charlotte and Laswell and some night stuff and Celestia and stuff like that. And it's also very good. But what sold me on the Earth version was honestly it was Tama, because Tama is like the best protection forward. It's better than Oron. It's better than Charlotte. It's very very good. Now I do want people to recognize that this is an auto ability. It's not just like sack at any time kind of a thing. It is an auto ability that goes on the stack. So that can change some things depending on what is going on in your game. So I don't want people to misplay with this. Also, can't attack or block. Um, there will be times that you have to porm your own Tama so they can attack. You know. So um I guess one last thing. I wasn't sold on Titus, and I am now sold on it. Eureka mentioned like he's played it many times. I've only played it once out of I don't know 50 or so games, and it to me feels mandatory now. Um, and the reason it's mandatory is it's technically you're out to everything. I did face Yagrash's, and I can, get rid of Yagrash or Titus. That matters because you can't freeze anything except for Yagrash when you have unit in play. Um, Dark Emperor, if that comes mainstay, this answers Dark Emperor. Um, there's other hate cards as well, but I do think you're supposed to play the Titus. I also like a copy of Graph in the Limit Break because um and I don't know if it belongs for sure, but it is something I'm considering because there are some times in this deck you have to play an early Miwa to keep control, and that means you can't play a late Miwa because it's never gonna die. Well, when it dies, everything dies, so it's never gonna die, especially to your opponent. So playing a Graph to remove your own Miwa so you can play another one is something that I considered and will probably consider in the future. I'm gonna look at the other Unidex here. So I guess I'll start off by saying, okay, this one's not three color, but I think three color Unidex are not where I want to be because I want to be able to play cards on the top of my deck at all times. And when you're playing three colors, that's really hard to do. Um, okay, so this version is not playing Cecil's or Rosa's, and is going a little more on the Viking stuff. Although he's not playing White Mage or Layla, but is playing Ferris, so that's interesting. Um, and it's playing Oron. So I think Oron is a good solution to opposing Porums. So maybe it belongs in the version I was playing in the future. I don't think you need two Ursulas. It does suck when one gets damaged, like when your one does go away, but it is what it is. I think this is a card that does nothing until you're winning the game. So I'm not a huge fan of it right now. As a two of Sophie. Um, so me and Eureka talked a little bit about this card. Kolka being able to switch a water card is really nice, and that does come up. It came up for me in the tournament where I had like literally all Earth cards. So um, having a water card there would have been very helpful. So there's a chance like this or Sarah Mobius or something like that belongs in the deck. However, this end of turn trigger doing a damage and drawing a card, that's a liability. If they burst on that end of turn trigger, you can't react. So that's really, really not great. Um, and I wouldn't want something like that currently. However, if you want to go deep and play the 4-drop Warrior Light, Um, Opus 5. Where are we at? Did I pass it? No, didn't pass it. Am I crazy? Where? Oh, it's wall. Duh. This guy. If you want to play this guy and say no EX bursts, then yes, they can still like search and whatnot, but you can do that every single turn and trigger Sophie. So um there is that. And maybe that's promising, but I'm still not completely sold on it. I just don't want, surprise things to happen and then they go to their like just imagine the scenario, right? Of like they take a damage with Sophie and then they hit like a Lev 6 or something that kills your Yuna. You can't respond. Yes, if you have an Oron in play, they can't necessarily do that. Um, but I mean, they could if it was like Lev 6 actually, because they could target a light forward. They can't target like they could hit materia, I guess, but like targeting light forward, they're not allowed to target the Oron. Um, so yeah. Anyways, they get rid of your Yuna in the end step, and then they go to their turn. They have free reign on everything, and that's a chance for you to lose. So that's why I don't like Sophie in play. However, I do value the Earth Water dual card, so it is something I'm going to consider in the future still. I'm not going to comment too much on backups, except I will say Lina. I feel like Lina is a trap. Um, it's it's kind of interesting, right? Because you can Lina special to res basically anything in the deck, right? But the EX part, when they EX you draw a card, I don't think I don't say we don't want that, but it's not needed because if you don't attack until you win, drawing cards when they burst doesn't matter. So in that case, you don't need it. That's kind of where I'm at with Lina. Um, and also having EX burst removal, like these Levs, which I think I'm going to go to the next version here. I'm not a fan of EX removal in the deck, even though there's, mirror matches. You could hypothetically say, oh, well, they're going to attack you in the mirror match. Well, if they Ursula you before they attack, these don't do anything. These are do nothings. So it becomes interesting of like, should you play those cards or not? Um, Now I wouldn't play a version like this at all in a million years because it's too divided in like look it's three colors and it's I feel like it's yes it's more water than the other two, but I feel like it's too divided for me. Now it feels based on Galoof more than anything because the Galoof and Diviniel seems pretty sweet, but I'm worried about casting my cards and I'm also worried about controlling the game because if are we playing backups early? Because if we're playing backups early, then our opponent's playing backups early, which means it's hard to control the game again. So we can't do everything. You have to pick forwards or backups. It's hard to do both. Usually you play like backups for one turn and that's it, and there's no other turns you need it, which means 11 backups from like in my opinion is too many. Um, or you play no backups, which again, 11 backups would be too many then. And you just go the full forward plan. I don't know what's right or wrong currently, but I'm not a fan of the three colors. In this version, I would probably think you'd want the backups because of this lightning so that you can play it a lot easier. I will say I do think it's interesting to have this back attack lightning in here because it costs one. And then um, Lulu is another thing I think is interesting. Because discarding a summon to do 5k to something is pretty valuable right now. I was also thinking of Braska. Um, and wondering if like decks like Magisa or some kind of fire deck was supposed to play Braska now because it's really good against Una decks. So I don't know. Um, but I do like the synergy is obviously here, but I just feel like going three elements instead of two is a lot higher risk. Now there is reward, right? Like I said, Vanille, but I would not want to take risks in a deck like this. I would want to be streamlined, consistent, and always have um, a exact plan every single game. Like I wonder if this version of the deck, if it's more volatile when you have Vanille and not Vanille. Like it's obviously better when you have it and when you don't have it, but like when you don't have it, do you lose the game? And when you do have it, do you win the game? That's kind of what I'm a little worried about. I don't know. Maybe you still win without it, but if you win without it, then do you need it in the deck? It's just a lot to think about. And then he's also playing Mist, um, which you can use both modes of this. Like a zero cost warp does that sculpture draws does help you with like not drawing double light cards. Um, and at the very worst, this is another Viking. So a Viking that's not the Viking name, the ETB draw card, and that's kind of what you want with your 2 cost cards. You want ETB draw card, so you can play a bunch of forwards in the same turn and then play Yuna. Oh, I will also say I'll go back to it real quick. I will also say the benefit to this deck is you have ways to search for your Yuna. So you see there's no materia in here. Well, that's because like cards like Drace. I wouldn't play Tyro, it's too expensive. But like Aphmau or Reveal 5, there are ways to, and Chime Reveal 4 for a character cost 2. Um there are ways to find your Yuna a lot easier in this version. So that's why there's no materia. So that's kind of the benefit of going to this three element deck. We've already seen mine. Bow. This is also 3 elements. Okay. I actually had a conversation in Discord today about Night Dancer. I'm not a big fan of Night Dancer. I feel like it is something that how do I even say this? The Dex is good against can answer it. Um and it also doesn't win you the game. It just kind of prolongs it. So like against Yuna mirror matches, I see in the near future like more poems existing, um, more free levs. I'll just Leviathan. This Lev. I think this card's gonna be a lot better as well. Um, I mean, obviously there's Tidus as well. There's a lot of things that, um, if they want it, the Unidex can have it, and the flexibility is huge. So while this technically stalls them, and it's like you have to deal with this before you win. I think it's also a do nothing card, so you need to have a strategy involved with playing this and protecting it, or playing this and like the extra turns you gain from it causes you to win the game, if that makes sense. And I think that's really hard to set up right now. We see Vanille in this again. We already talked about that. We see both Cognazos, which is interesting to me. Um, I thought about this one a little bit, but hindsight, I don't think we need it. The bouncing, because you don't have a Golbez, I don't think is relevant very much either. But I'm curious how it went for this player. Reno's interesting too because, um, when you dole 2 of their forwards, you get to 8k something, so that's kind of cool. So there's your removal, and then we see more lightnings, which is kind of cool. 2 Miwa is very interesting. I almost feel like this deck should almost always have 3, but I mean, maybe name clash is a thing in this deck, and you wanted to diversify. That's totally fine. And then again, the backups, like tool backups, we were talking about that. However, I feel like this one, there's a lot more utility here, and that's kind of interesting. So, but again, I would still want to only play 2 elements in a Uno deck just because the last thing I want to do is get like color screwed when I'm trying to play a control game, right? And also, it's like light being your fourth color is so. If you've ever played Chaos Arc, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, some Chaos Arc decks play one mana black, or even like X Death, right? It's Water Earth Chaos Arc with like one, maybe two lightning cards. Maybe they play Ixion. Like, I don't know. Um, and I think that sometimes that extra element, it's greedy and it screws you over, especially when you're playing light and dark cards. So it has to be worth it. And for me personally, right now, I don't think it's worth it. These dual lightnings, this to me signals they want these people want to attack, and to me, I don't want to attack. So maybe they have a different playstyle than me. But I feel like when I'm in control with my version, with this version, it's um, there are games where it's 100% chance for me to win, and if I attack, it's less than 100%. So why would I attack? There's no reason to. um, so I'm sure I repeated myself a ton here, but um, that's kind of the review. What would I play at the next event? If I were to play at this weekend, I would I would aim towards playing a deck with three Malboros. And I will say, for this version of the deck, I think the worst matchup is Lightning Water Monsters. Not Mono Water, not Fire Water, like Lightning Water. Because Moth Slasher and LP Cloud and other things. But the Mono Water and Lightning or and Fire Water versions, I feel like they don't have enough like comeback potential, and they kind of want to set up like the goblins. I feel like don't do enough. Um, and the water version has outs, but you have to play differently. Um, but by far, I feel like this card is the best out to the Unidex right now, and it is something that I would want to play this weekend. Now that being said, it's kind of funny because I feel like the monster decks, um, generally speaking, I feel like they're unfavored against four color warrior light, and I think four color warrior light's on the downtick, so it's probably a good place for the monster decks. However, like I would argue the Unidex beat warrior light, so there's your triangle, right? Warrior light beats monsters, monsters beats this deck, and this deck beats warrior light. Um, when I say monsters beats this deck, I'm not talking about lightning water monsters. Um, so I could also see something like that happening in the future, which is interesting, and I guess you could call it healthy. But at the end of the day, I think Yuna's gameplay, once it if there is a solved version of Yuna, I think there could be some issues in the future, and I don't want to call anything early, but it is not, when your opponent goes four forwards on turn one and you can't answer it efficiently, or you have to play a specific hate card that like Ixion, for example. Ixion's really good against Yuna, but I think it's really bad against everything else. So I personally find it a little bit difficult to play a card like Ixion right now, um, unless you can freely add it. So like going back to Salamander, I want to go back to Will's deck real quick. Oops. Oh, I guess we can go over the list real quick too. Will's deck here, this one Salamander is free. Like with Moody and Salaz, he doesn't need more than one. He only needs one. So if you can have decks that you can just throw in um, one summon that is like a silver bullet, perfect. That's exactly how I would approach it, because like and this card's not necessarily dead in other matchups because he can combo it with Ward and Axstar or whatever, right? And Zac. Like he can combo it with other things. But like a card like Ixion, you're not really comboing it with anything. It does what it does, and that's all it does. So that's why I'm not super sold on a card like Ixion, even though it does most likely beat the Unidex. I would want to find cards that are flexible, like the Salamander, um, and I'd be more comfortable playing cards like that. So I guess I have a list here, even though it's not perfect. Let me pull it up on my phone. So I wrote down like beating Yuna, and then Marlboro was at the top of my list, right? And then action abilities and specials. So I talked about Lulu and Braska. Those seem really good. Vanille, I'm not gonna make a deck around this, but this is a good example. Oops, spelled it wrong. So this Vanille is like interesting, right? Do 2k and then double the damage instead, and then do 2k. So it's a 4k special. And then when you do it again, it's +8. So let's say you've taken 12k damage. This is kind of what I'm looking for to beat Yuna. However, again, they can still tech to somewhat beat this as well, but this is my starting point on how to beat it. It's not necessarily Vanille as a card because I don't really believe in the FF13 decks at the moment, but like this is what I'm looking for. And like Braska discard to do 7, Lulu discard to do 5. It's kind of what I'm looking for. So I wrote down Adia. This is another example. Repeatable lose power, right? That seems pretty strong. Armstrong. Sam Prime played one of these. I think that's the right call. Exactly one. That's all you need. It's another good card against Yuna. Lightning. Oh boy. Okay. Water. This one. Okay. This is another interesting scenario. This first effect's obviously really good against Yuna because Yuna's the only deck that goes like insanely wide. Well, I guess Knights goes insanely wide too. But this first effect, even if they cancel this first effect, if you have a special and they don't have a card like Oron to redirect, like you can special and then target their Yuna into turn. So this is a way that on their turn you can special your lightning and it comes back at the end of their end step and you get rid of their Yuna. So you get free reign on your turn. This is one way you can do that. Porum, already talked about that. Brynhilder, a lot of people are playing Brynhilder. I do think Brynhilder is good, but it is you need to be pressuring them still. So I don't think it I think it belongs in Warrior Light, but I think it's not where I want to be with Warrior Light. But like think Fire Water, right? I do want it in Fire Water because Fire Water is also aggressive. Hedgehog Pie. I'm sure Hunter is happy I'm mentioning that card. That's another good way to deal with it. Kuchelin. So I also wrote down Minwu FFBE. And it's not specifically this card, but it's cards that force your opponent to dull freeze this. And this is one because it's 10k all your opponent's forwards. And I also wrote down Y'shtola special. So in my Scion matchup, I had to dull freeze this. The Estinian, that gets back and forward. This one right here, and Tataru. Every single turn, I had to freeze them, and that's like 6 forwards every single turn, right? And in my mind, I didn't know if my opponent had Miwa on their deck, which they turned out they didn't. But if they did, I'm like, I feel like I lose the game instantly because like a well-timed Miwa and having enough to pay for it on their side means like I lose my board. So with an Y'shtola special. which I feel like Scions might be well positioned because of that too. But having cards that you need to, your opponent, the unit player needs to freeze or keep locked down every single turn is another good way to combat the Unidex. And that's, I almost lost to the Scion deck on the feature match, and the Vaughn misplay I had was very catastrophic. But that was if you wanted to go watch it, it's on YouTube somewhere. I don't have the link up ready right now, but it was a match where I did attack early with like, I think I had 8 forwards. So it's risky, and it was against Lightning Water, which has a lot of bursts to kill my forwards. But I felt like I was losing control of the game, so I had to attack. You will have a good grasp of that the more you play the Unideck, of when you have to go for it, and when that's the thing is, if you know when you have to go for it, that's when, like, when's your best chance to win, that's when you go for it. That doesn't, like, don't be hasty though, because it's like, if I have 7 forwards in play and can attack and theoretically win, well, can I also win like 2 turns later with 0 risk between those 2 turns, but with like 11 forwards in play? And I found myself answering, yeah, it's fine. I can wait 2 turns. I have control of the game. There's nothing my opponent could draw. Waiting 2 turns is fine. So, and I think that is the way to actually play the Unideck. So, um, I don't think there's anything else to add. Seraphie is really good in this deck also. I'm not a Galoof fan. I actually really dislike Galoof, but I don't think there's anything better to put in this deck over it. So it stays for now, anyways. But yeah. Thanks for watching. If you're gonna come to the Kansas Materia Cup, say hi, and I'll be there judging, and hope to see you guys soon. I will also be in Chicago and Texas, so I'm sure I'll make some more videos before that. But until then, I'll catch you guys later.